It is the biggest entertainment industry on the planet. By the end of my second year, I was getting approached by brands like Sony, Ubisoft. It started to take form into this underground nightlife movement for the games industry, which is why we started to coin the phrase, the geek shall inherit the earth. Events really are the core of any community, of any industry.
From Ministry of Work, welcome to Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds, the show about Greater Manchester's pioneers, entrepreneurs and visionaries, and the stories that brought their ideas to life. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and on today's episode we're joined by Simran Whitham, founder and CEO of the Format Group, an award-winning events and creative agency at the heart of the gaming industry's cultural shift. Raised on a council estate in Tameside, Simran turned a one-off student event into Europe's largest gaming nightlife festival, working with global names like Sony, Ubisoft and Meta. And now he's launching Manchester's TEDx event for the Northern Quarter.
Yeah, so my name is Simran Whitham. I grew up in Tameside, Manchester, to a single mum from a council estate, and I'm now currently the CEO and founder of the Format Group.
Amazing. So tell me about your early childhood then. Single mum, council stay, what was life like growing up?
Yeah, it definitely could have been a lot worse. We were from a council estate. I do not deny that, free school meals, the whole shebang. It was what you picture in your head. Mum had to work and she had two boys to look after all on her own. But I was very fortunate, I wasn't as worse off as a lot of people could have been. My granddad filled the void that my mum had lost along the way, really, to be that father figure for us. Really inspired me. I actually get a lot of my entrepreneurial spirit from my granddad, but it was a very, very not to sound bad, very stereotypical council estate sort of area from Duckingfield. So anyone who knows area of Tameside, Manchester, you kind of know where I'm going with this. Barlow Road. Anyone who ever knows that, I was literally just the street behind Barlow Road, one of the roughest roads in all of Tameside. But from an early age, I can't say that I was never denied love. I had a lot of love from my mum. My mum always helped me pursue to chase my dreams. A lot of parents wouldn't do that when you've got a little child that says, I want to make video games. This was back in the day when people were like, that's not even a career. That is not a career at all.
I was about to ask that. How did that come about? I presume you've always been into computer games, and it was a early passion from an early age? Or?
Yeah, so I have got a very cookie-cutter origin story before it starts to it is very Clark Kent, but then it comes, not that I'm comparing myself to Superman, but it does take a bit of a Superman sort of twist to it, which was, very nerdy child. You wouldn't think it now, looking at me, the social acolyte that I am, but I was a very stereotypical nerdy child, comic books, so a lot of that came due to the fact that I just struggled making friends when I was growing up, and back then, obviously, video games, pop culture, comic book culture, it kind of acts as a way for people to find a form of escapism, but then I've always really loved the technical aspect of video games. They are the biggest entertainment industry on the planet. They earn more than music and film combined. Fun fact for you, if you was to take
wild, isn't it?
If you was to take the entire net worth of the Kardashians, Travis Scott, Donald Trump, video games still earns more money than all three of them combined. It is the biggest entertainment industry on the planet. And I was always fascinated with that video games put you in the driver's seat. With film and music, you're the passenger. Whereas with video games, you take direct control. And it was always that interactivity and you being able to just step into something that I feel really in love with. And I thought, I really want to make these.
What were the early games that captured you?
So I am a bit of a mix. So I love anything with a good story, but I also love anything with really good mechanics. So I'm going to throw some games out. You're like, what's that? I've never even heard of it. Then there are some things that you will definitely know. So I used to love the old school Battlefield games because they would transport you into the world, the whole first person shooter mechanic. But then there's games such as I'm trying to think of story-based games such as Heavy Rain, which were a huge inspiration for me because I love anything with interactive choice where you can make choices. The big one, which is trending now at the moment, if anyone who knows, this is the Oblivion. I played Oblivion back then. That's trending now because it's just had a remake drop a few days ago, but that was just because it was the first time I got introduced to open worlds where you just walk up.
It was wild.
The depth was wild, and I was just like, jeez, this is so amazing. And I used to just think these are actually incredible. Video games are amazing. And from there I basically wanted to pursue it, and my mum was like, I'm going to help you pursue this, really, because coming from a family that has been pretty much a long line, bar my granddad who basically dragged the family out of poverty, a long line of council estate families. My mum saw potential and was like, I'm going to help you as much as I can to help you pursue this career.
And how did that sort of come about then? How did you get your sort of first steps into the career?
Yeah, there was a lot of rejection along the way because there wasn't actually a lot of courses that taught this stuff. Like, it was a very, very generalized, as the industry has evolved, more roles around entrepreneurship, marketing. But back then it was, you are an artist, a programmer, a 3D modeler, or game designer. But the term game designer is very loose. Everyone thinks game designers are the ideas man. There is no such thing as a career where you just sit there making up ideas. That does not exist in games. Yeah. There is no such thing as the ideas man in the video games. They will laugh at you if you actually go up to and say that. But it was a very rigid sort of 4 entry pathways. So I kind of thought, right, well, I'm going to pick what I found coolest, which was characters, world building stuff. I thought, right, I want to be an artist. I want to go build 3D models of characters and stuff. So I basically pursued education that kind of suited that. IT, graphic design, anything that I could use basically as a stepping stone to the traditional path of education. So, and my mum was just very supportive. So we were always looking up courses, like what colleges to go to, that I could eventually use that as a stepping stone to get to this university or that college that taught that. But it was a lot of rejection because I just have always struggled with the traditional education system. I think it's very outdated. I don't learn from listening to someone talk at me. I'm a very visual, hands-on person. And sadly, even the early course of game design, which is a very hands-on craft, it was all very information-based. And I just wasn't cutting them out. Like, I wasn't getting the merits and the distinctions. I was getting just below that. So I was at college for 4 years.
Right.
Before I was finally got accepted onto a game design course. But it was all part of the plan because by that point, the irony is, by the time I'd failed so many times and been stuck at college, game design courses got made. So it actually worked out in my favour, failing so much. But that's kind of how my traditional sort of route, but everything kind of changed once I got to university. That's kind of like where the real story of Simran Whitham begins. Everything kind of looks like it's kind of cookie cutter, like just trying to get into the industry at that point.
So what changed at university for you?
I basically discovered very quickly that the industry is not everything it makes itself out to be. So I will be quite careful with how I word this, but video games is very over-glamorized. The entire industry, and none of the industry will disagree with me on this, it is not this cool thing that they advertise that you sat in the studio and you see all the cool cinematics and the graphics and stuff. Yeah, it is basically just people sat there doing the same tasks over and over again, trying to stop one thing from breaking. They fix one thing and then it breaks 90 things in another place. And the industry has developed what I call startup mentality. It is the biggest entertainment industry in the world, and yet it lives on startup mentality. And I will give you a reference. My fiance is in the NHS. I think we can all agree, to anyone who's in the UK, the NHS is not in a great place. The NHS has more formal procedures and proper infrastructure to support employees in the video games industry. There is no such thing as unions, proper unions. There's no overtime pay. Dental and healthcare are a rare thing. It's mainly in American companies they offer that, but the games industry has always stayed in startup mentality because it became the greatest entertainment industry very early on because they were rolling in money. They were like, well, we know people want to work for us. It's
almost take the mick with that guy.
Yeah, it's an industry built on passion. There will always be people that want to make video games, so we don't need to evolve. We can keep these sort of feudal practices that we've had all this time. And I got into the industry very, very early. I was already doing QA testing at games companies by the time I was 19, so I was already getting a taste for it. But the real sort of change came was I started to realise in my first year that there was no place for me. I wasn't an artist. I can't draw. I cannot draw. No one wants to see me draw. I hate programming, even though everyone tells me I look like a programmer. Hate it. Absolutely hate it. I cannot stand coding. And I remember just asking my tutors, like, I'm very disfranchised. Like, where do the people who can talk really well go? And they're like, oh, you belong in marketing, which, as I think we all know, marketing is like such a broad term.
It could be anything.
It could be literally anything. So a guest lecture came in. I always like to give this man a shout out, Neil Simpson, an amazing award-winning entrepreneur. He came into the university to do a guest lecture about the importance of networking. And that is kind of where that sole moment where something just listened to me. First time I actually listened to a lecture, he just walked in and went, 95% of you will never get a job in your industry because your network is your net worth. And I absolutely love that saying. And that clicked in my brain at 20 years old because I was just like, there's no point in having all this amazing skill if no one knows who you are. So I started going to a lot of networking events when I was 20 years old, and I realised very early on there was none in Manchester. Like, biggest creative city in the whole of the UK, and in my opinion, one of the best cities in the whole world. I was like, why is there no games industry events here? Like, we've got a huge game sector in Manchester. Not one of them has made an event. And I'm very different in my mentality. Like, I call it game development tunnel vision. a lot of people that work in the industry, they only know games, whereas I love the fashion industry, I love the music industry, I love the branding industry. I find that all of it just so fascinating. I consume so much content, and I realised that I wanted to build something that had never been done before. And I went to the Warehouse Project, and this is kind of where it all started for me at that point. Sasha Lord's Warehouse Project. I went to, I was just like, this is insanity. I was like, this is actually incredible. Like, biggest rave in Manchester. I was like, why has no one done this for video games? Like, why has no one took the best entertainment medium on the planet, most adaptable medium that you can do, and thrown it into nightlife culture? So I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go build a rave for the games industry so that there's something unique and concept there. And I realised very early on why no one had done it, because I had to take the most introverted industry on the planet
and turn it on its head.
Turn it on its head. And it was a very slow process. And when I was going to my peers in the industry, going to a lot of networks, I always do this. They were like, you're never going to do it. You should just go get a job in Tesco. That is, anyone who sees my LinkedIn, that is like the famous quote that kind of sparks that initial fire in me. Because one thing I will tell you, someone tells me I can't do something, I'll do it. They told me I couldn't get TEDx. I went and got it. They told me I couldn't hold the Warehouse Project to video games. Went and did it, because I just take that as a challenge to prove people wrong. And 8 years later, we accomplished that dream. We have literally packed out entire warehouses with some of the biggest names in the world: Sony, Ubisoft, Electronic Arts, Sneak Energy, FIFA. The brands are endless, really, that have worked with us along the way. But it was a lot of narrowing down the process, because I had to create culture. And the difficulty is, when you've created something that no one's ever done before, there's no framework. So you're
Where
building.
did you start with that?
So it started off in the northern quarter of Manchester. If anyone knows old school OG northern quarter, dive bar northern quarter, where the Pixel Bar is now.
Yeah.
Not Pixel Bar, sorry, NQ64. So we basically hosted a one-off event there. And I said, right, well, do you know what? This was before I started the business. This was just a one-time hobby thing originally, when I was between the first and second year of uni. I went, right, I'm just going to throw 100 quid on Facebook ads.
See what happens.
Just see who turns up. I don't care if 5 people turn up. It was just an excuse for me just to get a few people in a few room, just kind of create just a little bit of a get together, really, for people in the industry and gamers alike. We had over 110 people turn up to it, and it was booming all night, and it was just sort of this underground sort of like bar sort of gaming thing. We literally had 2 consoles. We had an old SNES, a PS3, and a Jenga set. I kid you not, there's even photos of this that I'll give you to overlay on top of this. Like, there's pictures of people in this packed bar just playing Jenga, because I didn't prepare for it. I expected like 10 people to turn up for it. And from there, the bar manager came up to me, he was like, you can do more events, right? Please do more events. Please do more events. This was a Tuesday night, so I'd basically brought them money that they would never see.
Been dead.
So did another one the month after, 120 turned up. Did another one the month after, 130. And small increments started coming to this sort of underground, sort of dingy gaming night that was taken. We were basically the original NQ64 before NQ64 became a thing. And local game studios started approaching us, say, hey, we've heard that you've got a game here on Showcase Games. Can we come showcase our games off? So throughout my second year at uni, I was basically hosting 2 events a month of like 100 to 200 people. And then by the end of my second year, I was getting approached by brands like Sony, Ubisoft, and it started to take form into this underground nightlife movement for the games industry, which is why we started to coin the phrase, the geeks shall inherit the earth. We started to really sort of like turn it into a bit of a brand.
And interestingly, that stage when those like big brands are approaching it, are they just saying like, we'll pay the bar tab, or what sort of a deal is it?
So bear in mind, I don't come from a business background. I'm actually the first entrepreneur in my family. Like, none of my family have ever done it. My granddad, I do call him the original OG entrepreneur, but that was like back in the day. This was a guy that had like 6 jobs at any point. Like, he was just working. Like, he was always grafting and always working. That's where I get it from. Like, that's where I get my workaholicism from. But I was the first business owner in my family, and no one had taught me anything. I didn't even know how to create contracts. I'd never even written a contract in my entire life. So at the time, I look back at it, it's like these companies took the rinse. Like, I was being approached by like big companies. I was like, yeah, I'll charge you like 300 quid to exhibit. Like, and I was like, bear in mind, I once charged Sony £100 to be at an event, and I was like, multi-billion-dollar company. But you just don't know any better.
Exactly. It's part of the learning journey.
And bear in mind, I was on a game design course, and they didn't really teach you business acumen. Like, they didn't teach you how to set up limited companies. I had to learn all that process myself, and along the way I found people that kind of mentored me as I went along. But that initial process, I kind of just saw it as an opportunity that I'm at university, I've got the financial security of student finance. I lived at home, so I chose not to go live at university. I only lived at university in my first year, realised it was the biggest waste of money ever. And even though I absolutely loved university, because I wouldn't be where I am without university, the course itself didn't teach me what I needed to be who I am. It was the people that I met whilst I was at university and the lessons that I learned outside of uni. But university put me in the environment that I needed to meet those people that made me who I am today.
And then how does it sort of move on and escalate from just organising local underground kind of drinks and a few games to more than that?
Yeah, so even I'm surprised at what we've accomplished. We've just had exponential growth over the last 4 years, really. So the big change came in late 2018. So I'd just graduated, so I'd just finished uni at this point. And bear in mind, I'd already set up another business whilst I was at university as well with some of my fellow students. We'd set up our own game studio. So I was running this events company whilst also running a games company at the same time. And we were kind of blending the two together a little bit to make all the synergy a little bit simpler. But in 2018, we decided, right, we're going to take it to the next level. I want to host like the biggest nightlife event for the games service. So we took over the print works. We hired out a club called Lazy Lizard now. I don't know what the club's called now. I think it's like some buffet or something now. It's the one as you go through the main entrance. It's the first one that's facing Hard Rock Cafe on your left. But I don't know what it is now. But we basically took over this venue. It was 2 floors. And I remember walking out, and this was like the sort of moment for me when people were like, where was it you realised you'd built something like big? I walked out, the venue staff like, you need to come outside. I was like, why? I went, you need to come outside. There was an enormous queue of like over at least 1,500 people. We had a queue going around the print works. We caused traffic at one point because people were just waiting across the street. It was absolutely insane. People just wanting to come for this nightlife event. And, you know, we had Sony there, Ubisoft there, like big indie studios there, big brands. FIFA was there. And I think for me, that was the one I was like, I've built something here. Like I've started to build.
Something that people want. There's no better feeling, right?
And there's nothing like us in the whole world. I challenge you to Google it. There is nothing like Format because it is a huge undertaking, because I basically built a cultural movement. It's more than just an event. It became this huge cultural movement. And from there, we started going into more B2B events. We started attracting senior leadership, community leaders, and big figures from the business space. So we started hosting B2B events, networking events, summits, conferences, the huge nightlife festival that is Format GG, the Ultimate Gaming Social today. And from that, you know, we were able to franchise out. So I did the Disney model. I started looking at partnerships with the likes of energy drink companies. So we've got our own branded energy drinks. We've got our own toys in manufacturing. We've got our own clothing line. Now we're actually hosting a launch event for our next clothing line on May 30th next month. And we've franchised the brand out in so many different ways and done so many activations.
And then the idea behind that presumably is because you've got a captive audience.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to then monetize in various different aspects, right?
Absolutely. And the brand as well. So the brand name, we used to be called Manchester Gamers Unite for the first like 4 years. But then as I started to learn little bits about branding, and I was on this huge learning journey myself, because I'd say I was completely self-taught. No one taught me how to set up a company. No one taught me how to do proper branding. I didn't even know what brand guidelines were until I was 22. But then I thought, right, I'm going to put this chunk of money that I've kind of made post-university, completely all done off my own back. There was no external investment. I come from a council estate family. There was no rich family behind me willing to just secretly donate like a lot of people. You see, it was all completely me, self-funding. I said, right, I want to take this serious. So I hired the actual man who did Nike's brand. So one of Nike's brand designers helped me come up with the brand Format Group today. So, and from that, we were able to basically expand the business onto multiple fronts. And that gave us that freedom to really start doing things for the creative industries, for the video games industry activations, and really franchise that brand. Because from Format, no pun intended, you can format it to pretty much anything. Yeah. And that's kind of how the brand came where it is. And we had this dedicated hardcore audience. And the big thing that I learned was in 2020, you can't just be an events company. 2020 was one of the hardest years of my absolute life. I had to let staff go, couldn't keep the company. Like I had to go down to a skeleton crew where it was just me and the COO of the company, because couldn't do anything. Digital events were an absolute waste of time. Does anyone remember the digital Zoom events? Yeah, and everyone,
bad, were they?
They were so awful, and it was just a horrible time. And from there, I kind of realised we have to change up the business model, because what if something like this happens again? We need different revenue sources. So that's when I started looking at things like more events. I built the marketing agency arm of the business out now, where we've worked with amazing brands like Nike, Rezel, who are an amazing Meta. We've worked with Meta before. We've done marketing campaigns for people physical. Then we've also got our physical retail line as well, so we can bring continuous revenue into the business through physical assets. So many different ways, really. And from there, that's kind of like where my entrepreneurial brain started to shift, because I started going to more events with people outside of the games industry. And I started surrounding myself with business entrepreneurs. And
you broaden your horizons a little bit, then, because if you're not careful, you can become involved in just a bit of an echo chamber, can't you?
The games industry is one massive echo chamber. I will say this is what I talked about earlier with game dev tunnel vision, is that they are very, 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 like, I'm the only person I know in the games industry that goes to fashion events, to the Great British Entrepreneurial Awards, that goes to events where, you know, there's senior level people from fintech, cyber security, because it's so important to really understand what other industries are doing and how you can incorporate that into what you're doing. Correct. And that is one thing that I think anyone who plays games, I don't know if you're a gamer yourself, right? So have you personally felt that video games have gotten a little bit boring over the last, like, sort
quite linear?
Yeah. Because sadly, we're sort of reaching a peak now where, you know, we're not introducing enough things like pop culture, fashion culture into games. They're kind of all following this same formula, and consumer needs are changing. Like, you know, the millennials are getting older, the Gen Zs are getting older now. And sadly, you've got to move with the times, really. And all these young people now, they see so many different pieces of content every single day. And the games industry really needs to look at that and adapt.
Good point. Yeah. The thing you mentioned earlier, then, you've gone out and sought out and secured TEDx Northern Quarter. So, why?
So I'm just an ambitious individual.
Yeah.
Like, I've always loved the TED formula. And one of the speakers from our events and a former sponsor of our events, a great individual called Andy Coley, who runs his own management training. He goes into companies and actually teaches them how to make, basically teach people how not to be horrible human beings and actually how to be good managers. He's just published a book called Leadership as a Skill. Great author, great public speaker. And he's a former TED speaker. And he was like, have you ever thought about applying for a TED license? I was like, you can do that. And he was just like, yeah, like, you can actually apply to get a TED license. I was like, oh, because I always just thought TED was this big conference that TED themselves organized every single year. And this was just over 2 years ago now. So he was like, yeah, why don't we look at applying? He was like, I've been a TED speaker. I know what they look for. Why don't we do this business venture together? Because you just love events. Like, your passion for events is there. Because I live and breathe events. Like, even though I've got other arms of my business, my events are my baby, because it's my passion. They act as a great way to bring business into a local economy. They just help industries grow, and they actually really act as grassroots community initiatives that keep industries alive. Because without events, I think we've all seen through the pandemic, really, just how isolating and how dry businesses can become. Unless events really are the core of any community, of any industry. And I just love what TED have built, like putting the best and brightest of any industry on there. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go get that license. And 2 failed applications later, they finally gave it me once I sort of nailed how we were doing it. So we filled out the application process, myself and my fellow co-host Andy Coley. We did it. We applied for it, and it was a very, very long process. They are super strict about how you get this license. The bureaucracy of it is absolutely insane, but loved. I do have to say that to TEDx. Thank you for giving us. And it's just been amazing to see the reaction to it, really. It's helped us take our own brand. We were already very well respected in the industry, but now people have gone, oh my God, like, this is the first ever games industry brand to get a TEDx. Like, no, the big companies haven't done it. Your Ubisofts, your Sonys haven't done it. So yeah, it took a kid from a council estate to be able to
hang on a minute, I could do this, right?
And I've learned that along the way with entrepreneurs. You often find it's the entrepreneurs who have less that innovate more than the big companies. And I've had literally massive companies come to me like, how do you do this? Like, how do you do it?
I'm like, you can wake up and decide to do it. That's the difference here. Where they'd have to go through 100 pieces of red tape to get there.
And it's not even the red tape. I think it's a lot of them. To build what I've built, you have to have those knowledge of other industries that I mentioned before. I hang out with models, entrepreneurs, fashion designers, cybersecurity programmers. I hang out with other industries that influence me to combine so many different elements. And I just, from all those experiences that I have, I've got a very diverse brain in how it thinks and how I can always innovate and change. When you run a successful company for so long, as I'm sure you'll know this from some of the people you've interviewed, is a lot of founders and CEOs, when they get to a comfortable point, they stop innovating because they feel like they don't have to. Whereas me, I've always had startup mentality, in the case that I can never stop innovating, otherwise I feel like we'll die.
Love that. What's the long-term plan then with the TEDx stuff?
So we have got the license pretty much indefinitely, as long as we don't do anything to make TEDx mad.
Yeah.
So, I will be making sure to make TEDx very happy over the years. And we can do one event a year as per the TEDx guidance. So it will be a continuous thing for Manchester every single year. And I'm very passionate. I'm a proud Mancunian. I love my city. I absolutely love Manchester to death. So to be able to give Manchester a second TEDx event after TEDx Manchester is phenomenal just for the city alone to basically highlight. And it's not only people from Manchester, it brings people from outside of Manchester into Manchester, and the business that'll generate, the business deals that will come off that, the trickle down effect of what that'll do. But this will become an annual event within our repertoire.
Amazing. And what sort of speakers are you hoping to line up? I mean, you must have been inundated with applications.
It was endless. I think we were saying this before the podcast, every self-help guru and public speaker on the planet has applied for this, but we are really, we can only have up to 14 speakers for it because of how we've planned the day, how we've actually planned the day. Because as much as I would love to have 50 TED speakers, I don't even think everyone's got the attention span to sit through 50 talks. It's an absolute lot. So we've designed it in a way to keep it fresh. It's an all-day event. It will run from 12 until evening. So once the talks finish, you'll then have an industry mixer where the public or anyone who buys a ticket can come network with the speakers and all the business owners that are going to be there. It's a great day to build business. And I say we're working with some really good entrepreneurs and business owners to help it make it a prime event that you want to be at. But in terms of speakers, we've selected some truly phenomenal individuals. So we've got the likes of Henry White, who is the creative director for the Sidemen and KSI. So the man who's basically making that brand. I don't know if you know the Sidemen, but YouTube brand that's beyond successful. We've got the UK's #1 female boxing champion. We've got games industry CEOs that are making huge developments in the video game space. We've actually got Keon West, the author of The Science of Racism, the man who has basically been able to identify that racism is actually a biological science within the brain and how the brain operates. It's really fascinating. It's so, speaking with that man, he's very intense, but it's also so interesting to learn about that sort of stuff. We've got a NASA rocket scientist speaking at it, and a lot of people from tech, creative industries. We don't discriminate. If you've got a really cool story to share, we don't care about your followers. We don't care about any of that stuff. We care about what you've accomplished as an individual. If we think you've got what it takes to step up onto that stage.
That's class. Sounds like it's going to be mega. When's the first event?
So it's going to be on September 8th. We've announced the date. So it will be in Manchester. I say full day event. Tickets are going live on May 9th. So I will say sign up to the waiting list, because once it goes live, there are only 100 tickets and it will sell out, because it's been hundreds and hundreds of people that have signed up for it.
Why only 100 tickets out of interest?
So that is actually a TEDx guideline that you have to follow. So for your first event, you're only allowed to do 100 tickets because you have to prove that you can be trusted with the brand of TED for a while. And eventually that increases, because this is our first event.
Oh, yeah, makes sense.
We're only allowed to sell 100 tickets.
Makes sense.
But next year that will increase. And just further and further as you are trusted that you can be a good guardian of the brand.
Yeah, makes total sense. And where, obviously, that's going to take up some of your time, naturally, right?
Yeah.
So where do you hope to take format?
So in the next few years, I want to take us out of the country. I say we've expanded across the Northwest. Now, I'm a proud Northern lad. Part of my business plan was always to grow up the industry in the North in particular, because the North, despite what everyone will tell you, because the Southerners love saying this, that, we've got the best industry. Scotland actually have the most games industry. Like Scotland, fun fact, the creators of Grand Theft Auto are based in Scotland. They're not America.
Yeah.
Like they're actually based up in Dundee in Scotland. So Grand Theft Auto was made here in the UK. Yeah. I will say that. But the North, Manchester, Liverpool, Yorkshire, Scotland, even Middlesbrough has got a phenomenal industry. So for me, part of my mission has always been to grow our sector here in the North, and I'm very accomplished. What I do say, I've put the UK and the Northwest in particular on the map for the housing Europe's biggest games industry nightlife festival, only of its kind in the whole world. But part of that now is expansion. I'm being approached by countries left, right, and centre. They're like, bring your festival to this country. Like, we think it'd go down so well. So we're having a lot of internal discussions at the moment and various external conversations to hopefully take us across the ocean very soon. And I'm very open to anyone that wants to talk about getting us into their country.
So What other events have you got planned?
Yeah, so we've got a number of B2B events throughout the year. So we've got our Creative Industry Summits. So we've got one on October 29th, and then we've got one on December 4th. We've got our Christmas Summit, and that's a great opportunity for business leaders, CEOs, entrepreneurs to come together, do some networking, meet other fellow founders in the creative, games industry, tech, law. It's open to every industry that comes to that. Cool. We've got our signature festival, so Format GG, the Ultimate Gamer Social, aka the Warehouse Project of Video Games in Liverpool on October 30th, and then also TEDx Northern Quarter on September 8th.
Fab. Can't wait.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
That's Simran Whitham, founder of The Format Group. Thanks so much for listening to the show this week, and please do make sure to click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to check out Ministry of Work, where you can also sign up for a free trial day. This episode was produced, recorded and edited right here at Ministry of Work, with a special thanks to our studio manager Dan Brown and, of course, to you for listening. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and this has been Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds.